Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Christensen,
I'm Coffee Brown.
and welcome to episode 12 of
Don't Die Dumb.
See, we did that in unison. We're like the Rockettes, only with vocal.
I have better legs.
Yeah, one on each side, too. Now, people around me lately have been saying, you can say Merry Christmas. You don't have to say Happy Holidays. You can say it. I don't care. I like Happy Holidays because when you say Merry Christmas, you're saying, I'm only wishing you a good time if you're Christian. I want my Muslim brothers and sisters and people that are Jewish and people of other faiths to enjoy their holiday as well. But I don't see what the big deal is, why we have to say Merry Christmas. But some people are really into that.
I'm a traditionalist. I say Io Saturnalia, which is the ancient Roman holiday that was repurposed as Christmas.
And who knows what you're talking about when you do that? Is that Latin or is that Italian?
Yeah, Io Saturnalia is Latin, and it was a festival to Saturn, the god Saturn. He was actually one of the Titans. But my point is that every culture that has winter has a midwinter celebration. So it shouldn't surprise us that Ramadan, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and Christmas all fall around the same time period as each other. And as you go back in time, you find that over and over. So when people say, oh, this modernism, you shouldn't say happy holidays, put the Christ back in Christmas, I'm like, let's go further back. Let's put the paganism back in. Let's go Io Saturnalia.
Well, today is the first day we're recording on the first day of winter, the 21st. And it's just freaking beautiful out here, which is good and bad. It's good because it's
That's the
nice
true view
today.
outside our window there.
Yes.
So
And we'll speak of that in a moment. But my point is, isn't Christmas actually a celebration of the shortest day of the year? They brought in holly and pine trees, whatever, to celebrate there's still life. We're almost through it.
well, hump day, more like, rather than almost through it. We're sort of right in the middle
Yeah.
of it. I mean, if you think about it, if you live in a place that gets super nasty and cold and snowy in the winter, you're cooped up inside all the time. At some point, you really want to see your friends that you haven't been going out and visiting. You really want to feel like there's a world out there and so forth. And so it shouldn't surprise us that if there's winter, there's a midwinter celebration. It would be surprising if it were the other way around. I bet you anything Neanderthals had some sort of equivalent.
Now, since we're in winter, it's also not only Christmas season, but flu season. And this year, flu is,
Sorry, what?
my sentiments exactly. Flu is spiking, as well as measles and many other things. It's a shame that some children have already died from measles. I get my shots, as we used to call them. I get them every year, and a lot of people aren't. And is that making the flu season worse, or is it just cyclical?
Before I get to that, which I will, if you were a soldier or a policeman about to head into a firefight, would you put on body armor?
Oh, heck yeah.
Why? They might shoot you in the head and you could die.
I wear the same stuff
Or
when I'm having
you
sex.
could get hit in
but-
the armpit and you could die.
Yeah,
right?
but it's still helpful. It still could save my life.
Okay, so vaccines are like that. They give you a certain percentage protection. Vaccines are not a guarantee that you won't get ill, but they make it less likely that you'll get ill. And it surprises me how many people think that if it's not 100% sure or 100% never, then there's no real difference. To them, to a lot of people, the difference between 40% odds and 80% odds is like, well, they're both uncertain, so they're the same. No, they're not. One of them is twice as likely as the other. So vaccines reduce your likelihood of getting an illness. And in a typical year, the flu will kill about 30,000 Americans. It's a pretty big number. The only reason we don't react more to it is we're pretty used to it.
Yeah.
But if this were new, if it were a new disease and it was going to kill 30,000 people every year, we'd be losing our minds over it. We have a protection, and it's a very good protection, and that's the vaccines. So it's amazing to me that people don't take advantage of them. Your other question was, why are we having more flu this year? Well, anti-vaccine sentiment has risen, so that's one reason. And of course, the wrongest guy in the world is running the CDC, and making it worse. But also, every year they make bets about which flu is going to be the one that's going to hit America. They do that by watching Asia, because it turns out that the flu moves from Asia toward us. So we get advance warning every year. We can watch what's happening in the direction that it's largely coming from. But that advance warning isn't perfect. Some years, the vaccine is tuned, it's usually tuned to 3 to 5 strains of flu, but there are multiple strains of flu. And some years they get it right, and some years they don't. Some years they get it right, but the flu mutates. So the degree of protection we get varies wildly from year to year. Low would be 40%, high would be 80%. Generally, it's floating around somewhere in between those extremes. So this year, the vaccine may be less effective than, say, in an average year or a good year. More people are choosing not to get vaccinated. Those would be the main reasons I would predict why the flu season is more severe. And we do know there are new mutant strains this year, but there are every single year. You go back in any year you want and look at newspapers from about this time of year, and they'll be talking about a new and unexpected flu variant, because the flu varies all the time.
Now, that brings me to a new subject, and that being a related subject. People don't trust science because of people like Joe Rogan, Aaron Rodgers, RFK. People don't trust science anymore. I don't understand that. Legitimate scientists have no dog in the fight. They deal in facts. How are we going to get people to trust scientists again?
Right. Well, part of it is that same thing that I said about uncertainty. So science isn't like faith. Faith knows it's right. And if the evidence doesn't agree, well, then the evidence is wrong. In science, it's the other way around. If the evidence doesn't agree with the conclusion, then the conclusion is wrong. A lot of people choke on that. Also, science no good scientist claims that we know anything with absolute certainty. The power of science comes from doubt. Everything is subject to revision and to iteration. So science is always getting a little closer to the truth. We're closer to a lot of truths in physics and chemistry and biology and stuff than we were 2 or 3 decades ago. I have a huge chart in the other room, super huge, complicated chart of all the biochemical pathways that were known at the time that chart was made 30 years ago. If that chart were made again today, it would have to be at least twice as big, probably bigger than that. And it would be even harder to read. It's a pretty challenging chart. So people tend to say, well, if science can't say this for sure, then they know nothing. At the same time, I often hear people say, well, scientists think they know everything. Okay, we're guilty of the first one. We absolutely agree that we don't know everything. Mm-hmm. But no good scientist uses words like fact and I know for sure and there's no possibility of doubt. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I've made the mistake of using phrases like that, but I usually get my nose rubbed in it a second later. The limits of our imagination are not the limits of the universe.
Now, I get frustrated because people will tell me a story. They'll say, well, I knew a guy, I heard about a guy, I didn't read about it or knew him. I heard about a guy in Cleveland that got all his shots every year, and he got pneumonia and died. So there you go.
Yep, that can sure happen. But the people who don't get the shots get pneumonia and die way more often. So yeah, I believe you. If you tell me that story, it's like a perfectly credible story to me. It doesn't change the fact that your odds of seeing next year are much better if you get your vaccinations. Just get used to the fact that this is not a world of certainties.
Now let me reply to one of our viewers who said, you talk about vaccines, you talk about health, but that's good for you two old guys. I'm a young guy, I don't need that.
Now is when you need to be investing. Just as if you start saving 15% per month from your paycheck, when you're 20, you will be wealthy when you retire. It can be tricky to do, but the easiest way to do it is to not increase your spending when you get raises. In the same way, the investment you make now as a young person in your health, that cholesterol that you rack, do you know how old do you think we are when cholesterol first becomes detectable on autopsy in our bodies?
I would think that it would be around 12, 13-year-olds. You'd start having sandwiches.
Much better guess than most people. 8.
8?
Yeah.
How do you get cholesterol when you're 8?
Kids eat meat. They eat bologna. They eat cheese.
Oh,
they
yeah.
eat animal products that have animal fats in them.
Processed.
Right. Processed, but even unprocessed. I mean, animal products, that's where we get cholesterol. And we also make cholesterol. So you can be a vegetarian, as I am, and still have to manage your cholesterol, because your genetics will also determine how much you make. And incidentally, too low is even more dangerous than too high. So, that's another place where we commonly make a mistake, is we think if a little's good, a lot's better, or if a little's bad, then 0 must be the right answer. You want your cholesterol between the scary low number and the scary high number. Not abnormally low and not abnormally high. Every single steroid hormone in your body, which is half the hormones of steroid, half are peptides. Every steroid hormone in your body is made from cholesterol. Without it, you would die. You also couldn't absorb fat-soluble vitamins.
So give me 3 examples of good cholesterol.
Well, HDL, which is high-density lipoprotein, it's actually named for the carrier of the cholesterol, but HDL is good. The higher your HDL is, generally speaking, the less risk of heart disease you have. Notice I didn't say 0. LDL is bad cholesterol. So the way I think of it is healthy HDL and lousy LDL. Okay, there are subtypes within that. The ratio between the HDL and the LDL is more important than the total number. So raising your HDL and lowering your LDL, you could wind up with a higher cholesterol and still get a win out of it.
Do you remember the question? Give me 3 examples of good cholesterol. Like, is an avocado a good cholesterol?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
So virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, avocado is good, canola oil is good, sunflower, mediocre, coconut oil, not good. What you want is cooking fats or eating fats that have the lowest saturation levels that you can get. You'd also like them to have omega-3 and omega-6 in them. It turns out that canola and olive oil are both excellent choices, and in slightly different ways. So alternating them or combining them would give you the best of both.
Okay, let's switch gears real
Well,
quick.
actually, it gets a little better than that. This is
Okay,
kind of cool.
good.
The story behind it is lengthy. If people ask for it, I'll tell it, but it's long. But the short answer is the good oils can actually remove cholesterol from your body. So they can at least partially reverse bad eating habits in prior years. Can they completely reverse it? I don't know. But I know that they can at least partly reverse it and maybe completely reverse it. So the sooner you switch to good oils, not only do you stop the damage from cholesterol from accumulating to the degree that you can, remember genetics still play a role, but you can reverse some of the damage of a bad diet from previously.
I want to switch gears and have you tell us a little bit about the artist and the art that we're using for a backdrop today.
This is a Japanese artist from about 150 years ago, Civil War times. His name is Hokusai, and he carved these designs into wooden blocks and then printed with those, like we all did with linoleum blocks in high school and stuff. And many of them were printed in colors, but these are just multiple different blocks stamped onto the same, in this case, rice paper. So here's your introduction to Hokusai. You've seen many of these designs around because he was so classic for Japanese art. He had the same effect on them that Peter Max did on 1960s and 70s poster art.
I've always found, and I draw and paint myself. I do real basic
He's
poster art,
quite
nothing
good.
like this.
I've seen his work. It's good.
Well, my point is that doing wood blocks is so hard because you do it backward. Can you imagine the concentration to do this backward? I
Yeah.
find that amazing.
Well, of course, the typical way that you do it is draw on charcoal and then flip the charcoal over and press it onto the wood to use that as your initial cartoon. The original meaning of cartoon is the charcoal sketch over which you paint. Like Leonardo da Vinci's sketches were called cartoons.
Now, this is a time of peace. It's the Christmas time when we're recording today. And many people don't know or don't care to know about the other religions and do they practice peace. I was married to a wonderful Malaysian woman for a number of years, and she had me reading the Quran, and when I read it, it said that you can declare war, a holy war, against someone who's attacking you. You cannot start the war. You can only defend yourself. You can't kill that person's wife. You cannot kill that person's children. You cannot burn their home, burn their crops, hurt their animals, hurt their pets. I found the true essence of the Quran to be peaceful, but that was deceptive, wasn't it?
Yes and no.
And the Bible's the same way.
Yeah, I've known a number of Muslims through my work and so forth. And all of the Muslims I've known view Islam as a religion of peace and tolerance.
Yes.
But that is not the picture most Americans have of it, because the high profile part for us is angry Muslim terrorists. It's worth remembering that these are a tiny, like 0.03% of Muslims engage in terrorism. The likelihood that the next person you meet at Walmart is a murderer is higher than the likelihood that the next Muslim you meet is a terrorist, just by way of comparison. So, yeah, it really gets our attention when a Muslim commits a terrorist act, but Islam is the either first or second most common religion in the world. Christianity and Muslim fight over that.
Yeah.
I keep saying Muslim, I mean Islam. And hardly any of them ever engage in violence. So it's not a fair picture of Islam that we have, and it was used to whip up a frenzy so that we could go to war in the Middle East, which has accomplished, as far as I can tell, pretty much nothing.
And let me say this. I think we have to understand that Hamas is not Palestine, Netanyahu is not Israel, Trump is not America, and radicals on many sides are not who we are. I don't think that the majority of Democrats are the lunatic left, and I know that a lot of Republicans are good, honest, hardworking people.
You know, I'm
But-
going to push back on that a little bit.
But let
Okay.
me finish. But they've been sold a bill of goods. But that's not all of them.
So where I'd push back just a little
Yes.
on that last statement is, yes, Republicans are batshit crazy. I'm looking you in the eye, you're batshit crazy. Conservatives are not. Conservatives have a deep intellectual history that is worth engaging with. And we need the dynamic tension we've had in the past between conservatives and progressives. However, conservatives do believe in stratification of men and women, but they also believe in respect for women. That is not current Republicans, who think that childless women shouldn't be voting, for example. Conservatives do not invest in hate. Although they do believe that some groups are better than others, they don't believe in pogroms and purges. In fact, their big horror of communism is that Mao Zedong and Stalin had purges. And yet now, look at how our government is trying to purge everybody it considers progressive. Conservatives believe in economic laissez-faire, which is an exaggeration of Adam Smith's position. But they hate the idea of tariffs and micromanaging economies. Well, look what we're doing now. Conservatives believe in states' rights, but the current Republican Party is actually forcing states to go along with their central authority in areas that in the past even progressives considered to be states' domains. Conservatives believe that they are pro-life. They're not very good at it, but that's what they believe about themselves. There might be good reasons for capital crime. I'm not prepared to say we shouldn't have capital punishment in this country, but gloating over it is not a pro-life position. And being excited about the idea of increasing the number of executions we do is not a pro-life position. I could go on for a long time, but I'm on Pete's dime at the moment. My point being, stop conflating Republicans with conservatives. They are as opposite to conservatism, more opposite by far than Democrats are. And if conservatives want a conservative party, they need to make one because they lost theirs.
Now, I've read the Bible all the way through 3 times. Once at the college course, once for my own learning, and a third time when I discovered everything was being quoted at that time from the King James Bible that really said that the king was as good as God. Now, I find it troubling that so many people will cherry pick things out of the Bible and in fact take a real violent thing that was in the Old Testament and say it, well, that's from the Bible, it must be true. and they claim the Bible's infallible. And I'm not trying to impugn your religion. Very good things in the Bible. But if it was infallible, why'd they have to rewrite it in the New Testament?
So it's thought that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were retelling stories from an original Bible written by an unknown author referred to as Q. That there is an earliest central Bible, and these later four writers, the people we credit with the Gospels, probably a lot more people were involved, but those are the four we credit.
Yeah.
They had their own takes on it. So in one of the Gospels, Jesus is pretty fire and brimstone, and he's all about smiting his enemies and stuff. In another one, it's the lion and lamb shall lay down together. Generally speaking, though, Jesus was pretty consistent about disapproving of wealth, about taking care of the poor, and about universal love. And so when modern Christian churches preach a prosperity gospel, or that empathy is bad, you have to work hard to distort the original Gospels to that degree. I mean, that takes some agility. So we do know that the Gospels are not completely consistent with each other, which means there have to be some false statements in there. And we do know that they all draw from an original source. You could postulate that that original source is infallible and inspired by God, but it's not the one we have available now.
Now, Charlie Kirk, who was supposedly a devout Christian, said that we should have public executions, and children very young should witness them so they can see the good in them, and that they won't be, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting, and they won't be distracted or taken away from the cause of real religion.
So one of the things that I think religions, lots of religions, all the Abrahamic religions get wrong, is the idea that you can coerce belief. You can force people to behave as if they believe in the religion, but what people actually believe requires that you make the case in a compelling way. And so killing people you disagree with isn't, I mean, there's no virtue in that. If I go to church every Sunday, because otherwise I'll be killed, God's not giving me brownie points for that.
Well, more people have been killed in the name of religion than anything else. We've said that many times. But many people who are religious do a lot of outwork. They do a lot of charity work. They do a lot of pro bono work. They're out there helping in the community. And it's hard for a person to know nowadays, is this for real?
Well, I mean, at least most of it is for the purpose of evangelical preaching, so that I'm giving you this free meal in order to coerce you to sit there and listen to my sermon. And this has been used to replace a lot of other cultures. And one of the places where the right and the left diverge is that conservatives tend to think they're doing everybody a favor when they get rid of those stupid pagan superstitions and replace them with the real Christian faith. Exactly what Islam would say, by the way. And progressives tend to think that this is exerting a hegemony that destroys cultures and reduces the total number of cultures in the world. I'm kind of not on either page, actually. I don't particularly care about preserving cultures intact. But if you're going to say it's important to preserve cultures, then you can't say all the cultures except Western European culture. You have to respect that we should keep Aristotle and Plato and, Burke and people like that, the Western European culture. The trick is to add enough cultures that people get a lot of different perspectives on the same question so they can be more thoughtful about forming their own opinions.
I'm shocked how close Christian nationalism is to Sharia law.
Very. Well, fanatics of any stripe. I mean, if you go to Israel, the conservative Jews there look just like Shia Allah or fundamentalist right-wing Christians. So when fanatics try to impose their religion, they completely miss the point that going to God because you choose to is the winning answer, okay? Being forced to act like you're on the team isn't the same thing. And if you're afraid of your children hearing opinions other than your own, then what you're telling me is you know your own opinions can't stand up to comparison.
I would say a possible litmus test that I've always used it, hopefully would be, and you can disagree with me on this if you want, does your doctrine of your religion, do your elders oppress anyone?
Well, conservatism believes in hierarchies, but not oppression per se, whereas far-right populism is big on oppression. And here's the problem. A lot of the popularity of the current administration is, well, they'll hurt the people that I don't like. Yeah, they will at first, but they'll get around to you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know people that have told me, yeah, they're deporting these Muslims and they're deporting these Mexicans, but they deserve it. They're here illegally. 31% of the people of the 63,000 they have in Alligator Alcatraz have no criminal record. Of those, 10% don't have any driving violation. Can you say that? You've been through your whole life without a ticket? Come on.
And actually, I've been through a lot of research lately. This is public research, some of it from conservative states, about immigrants. And the story that we're being told, that they're committing all this crime and that they're responsible for taking jobs away, is simply not true. They tend to be a net economic benefit, partly because they're more entrepreneurial. And that persists for 2 or 3 generations, about as long as the accent persists, interestingly enough. So they tend to be more driven, and that shouldn't surprise us. You'd have to be pretty motivated to pick up stakes, go from here to Malaysia, and start a company, right? So we're getting the most motivated people as immigrants, so it shouldn't surprise us that they're often more entrepreneurial. They also have very significantly lower crime rates. Now, there is one remaining question that's a little bit interesting. Do they dilute the culture? Do they change the culture of America because they bring Japanese ideas or Chinese ideas or African ideas into our culture? Now, I'm not afraid of that because I tend to pick the best from every menu I can find. But if you want the only thing on the menu to be, white bread and mayonnaise and ham, they could make you uncomfortable. I don't really understand why we interpret adding to our culture as suppressing our existing culture. But I do agree that progressives sometimes phrase diversity in terms of quashing Western European culture in favor of other cultures. And you would expect a backlash from that, and we got one.
Getting back to the issue of peace, I met a woman of color at a market, and she spoke with an accent. I said, "It's a great accent. Where are you from?" And she froze. She was afraid to answer me. So I said, "Well, you're obviously not from here. You're very brave to move out here alone." She was, "Oh, I'm from Africa." And she got relieved. I wish in a time that's supposed to be of peace, we weren't making people afraid to be themselves. I don't see the purpose in that,
Well, some people, when they hear an accent, they think, oh my God, a threat to my culture. When I hear an accent, I think, first of all, this person speaks at least one more language than I do. And they've traveled more than I have. And they've taken on a challenge I would not, which is to move into a new language, a new culture, a new country, and try to make a life for themselves, which I would find that very daunting. So it's odd to me that we treat an accent as a negative because all of the connotations I have around an accent are quite positive.
I think that if you really believe that you want to be in a peaceful country, a country that promotes your fellow citizens and people that are trying to be citizens, the one thing you'd want to get rid of, and we don't want to go off on a tangent in this, but armed gangs that are unidentified in mass that kidnap people off the streets.
And who provide cover for armed gangs that are not with the government. This near vigilante version of ICE is not what we've had in the past. And because we're not using due process, because it's just more efficient to round up everybody with an accent and assume they're illegal, well, we've caught a lot of legals in that same net and damaged their lives, often irreparably. There is a reason for due process, and when you get rounded up without due process, you'll know what that reason is.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view, we're out of time. But before we go, I want to say, if you can make someone feel better, do something over the holidays to help someone. I donate some time at a local food bank, whatever you can do. And recently, one of the food banks in New Mexico had a big rally. I was shocked how many people showed up. And some of them, I know some people that are terribly poor. But doggone it, they dug up a can of food to share.
It's fascinating to me that the poor donate a larger share of their income than the wealthy. In terms of total dollars, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates and some of these others donate just gigantic piles of money. But in terms of percent of their wealth, it's smaller than it is for poor people.
I'm Pete Christensen.
I'm Coffee Brown.
Happy holidays. And remember,
Don't die dumb.